when you're coming up with, a piece like this made with
168,000
straws, how much are you thinking about the piece itself visually, like obviously the physical component of the piece, but also the story and then the virality of the piece? Like what's your process in making a piece like this?
So first off, it has to be something that people find interesting in words, right? I made an art installation out of 168,000 plastic straws that we collected off the streets of Vietnam. Do you want to see it? It sounds cool enough for you to want to see it, so even if you don't know me, you've never heard of me.
You're imagining the headline.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the headline. So it starts there.
Yeah.
The second from there is figuring out, well, how am I going to put a story together that people can share and find interesting to share? Mm-hmm. In this case, the piece that you're playing right now is a spoken word piece where we had a spoken word poet come and remix a piece, and then through that piece of how he talks about how the last straw that broke the camel's back, it was the metaphor that he chose to kind of build this entire piece on. We're showing kind of the creative process behind it. Mm-hmm. Did we follow the rules of virality? Not quite. This is more like Vimeo staff pick style as opposed to like optimized Facebook piece, but I can still make a Facebook optimized version of this. So back in the time, back in the days, the way you would have done this was like, square letterboxing top and bottom, test out a couple different intros, just have silent text on, make it simple, make it stupid, make it so that a 3-year-old can understand it. That's generally like, the very simple rule. Mm-hmm. From there, I also try to think about, and this is becoming increasingly important, is if I am not willing to live a life of being an influencer, of constantly putting content out there, well, then I just need to find people who are already doing that and have them feature what I do. In this case, getting a Guinness World Record wasn't because I wanted a certificate that said Guinness World Record. It's because Guinness has, millions of followers on YouTube. And if I get this, it becomes headline worthy. Because now it's not just I collected 168,000 straws. It's I created a Guinness World Record with 168,000 straws. And now it's more impressive.
Yes. And the New York Times or whatever, somebody else can
whichever
pick up the story.
Place, exactly. And so now when you write to a reporter and say, hey, I just got a Guinness World Record, this is how we did it, these are the pieces of content that you can use to tell your story, are you interested in sharing it? Your chances of success are a lot higher. And so I think, as someone who creates like 1 or 2 pieces a year, it's sort of important for me to like make sure that whatever I create has the possibility of being seen by as many people as possible. Otherwise, I don't get the ROI. The client doesn't get the ROI. No one gets the ROI. Yeah. But it is becoming increasingly hard to guarantee any sort of return on investment. Mm-hmm. Maybe the biggest shift that I have done in terms of my identity, how I perceive myself, is I used to see myself as a marketer who happened to take good photos. And over time, I've adopted increasingly the label of artist, because the job of a marketer is to get KPI, like metrics, numbers, big numbers. No matter what is going on in the world, your numbers need to keep up. Otherwise, you're not relevant. As an artist, your job is to create fucking great shit. Am I allowed to swear on the podcast?
Yeah, you are. Yeah, 100%. I swear all the fucking time.
So that is your job. Your job is to like own a piece of someone's heart. Your job is to make sure that whatever you create is unforgettable, right?
To evoke
emotion, change the way they see the world. And I think that's just it feels like a better thing to pursue. It feels like there's a little bit more depth.
I mean, I'll give it, no, like, you can't pat yourself on the back in that, but I'll tell you, yes, 100%. Okay. Without, I mean, Kyler, are we wrong here? Obviously, making art that has real impact and a message that isn't just about selling more of something is going to land better, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Are you kidding? Like, and it feeds the soul. It's like what drives us.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, 100% yes.
The way I see it is like people see the art that you are creating, and I love that you add the word also activism to it, because we kind of, here's the thing, in those algorithms, every once in a while a story comes by with a turtle with a straw in its nose, or, we hear about the problem. We know about the problem. There's a study that was done that I think there's 80 articles that talk about the problem of climate change and 1 that talks about the solution, right? And that was years ago. Maybe now it's better. I doubt it. It's
probably worse.
Yeah. But, whatever. That was the stat, right? We hear about these pieces of information, right? There's going to be more plastic in the ocean in 2050 or 2048, whatever it is, than fish. But we feel small within it. And what I love is that you're taking that story and then saying, how do I make something big, get a corporation to pay for it, or get someone to pay for it, a benefactor of sorts, right? And it's some I'm sure are more philanthropic in nature, and some are more, hey, we know that this is going to get more attention for Dell. Well, yeah, great. But you're using their budget. It's kind of a Robin Hood like, right? You're using their budget to say, let's tell a story that really matters, and hope that some kid halfway around the world is going to see this and say, you know what, maybe I can invent something that cleans up the plastic in the ocean, or hope that it inspires something bigger than marketing, if you will, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think when we look at change, we often focus disproportionately on the moment of change, that moment of transition, right? We think of change as binary. People care, they don't care. Yeah. But in reality, like, everything exists on a spectrum, right? Mm-hmm. Change exists on a spectrum. And so what I do with my work, it's more like if we're starting at negative 30 degrees and we're trying to get to plus 30, how can I just help continuously create new ways of talking about boring topics, create new ways of introducing different people. Like, the work that I do is designed, hopefully, to not preach to the choir. Mm-hmm. I hope that the work that I do is interesting enough so that anyone, even someone who doesn't care at all about climate change or the environment, can look at it and be like, oh, that is really cool. I wonder what they were doing there and why they were doing it. Yeah. And by educating through adventure, by saying, hey, look at this really interesting thing. Look at all these people that came together. Look at the way we figured out how to solve all these different problems. And this is why we did it. It's actually something that was like really important to me. I mean, you can believe what you want, but this was something that was really important to me and all the other people. And it can be really cool. Like, you don't have to be, I don't know, the outdoor hippie that, uses Flaw Raven and like wears Allbirds. Like, there's so many different iterations of how you can be engaged and involved. Yeah. Let's find ways to make sure that those voices also can be elevated and heard. Mm-hmm. And yes, I try to get companies to pay for this stuff because ultimately, at the end of the day, I create 1 or 2 projects a year. Who's going to have like budget to throw at art? I think when we think of impact, most people would much rather invest in a tangible, concrete solution, right? If you had $1,000 to give away, would you rather, I don't know, do something that feeds the homeless or create art that raises awareness for the homeless? You would want to feed people. Yeah. But the problem with feeding people alone is that it doesn't address the root cause. Yeah. So it never addresses the root cause. You never address the systemic issues. And so how do we change systemic issues? I think culture has a role to play in that.
100%. They have to become part of the narrative that people are discussing at that time. They have to be culturally relevant at that time. Yeah. And we see that with any topic of any kind. Anything that is brought forward as a villain of sorts. That can be a global pandemic. That could be realistically, it could be anything, right? Like, I mean, in California, they're going to say it's the homelessness problem. That's a problem. Or wildfires is the other villain. And these are very real villains in some cases, but none, unless we create culture or narrative or stories that kind of address elements of the root cause and at least can point to it, we have no hope of ever solving the problem. You know what I mean? And some of these problems are layered, and many of them are, of course. Where do you start? But part of what I think I love about the work that you're doing, and I know, the work that you're talking about right now and the art piece you're working on right now, which you tell me what you can say or what you can't say, but the idea of this giant tap art piece that you're creating is to say, we can't it's not about, in the plastic problem, for example, it's not about recycling at this point. It is about literally ending all the machines that are making more plastic. We have to stop creating plastic. We have to stop using it. We have to stop demanding it, both as a consumer, but also as a producer. And we have to stop seeing as in a sense, this bailout of a solution for convenience, essentially, because that's where many plastics are used. Now, do I think it's unreasonable to say today or tomorrow, all plastic needs to be halted? Unfortunately, there's too many things that are using that at this moment. But there is definitely ways that we could just completely shut off the tap in so many facets of life. And there's so many solutions that are out there. But how do we paint the villain and the solution all in one story? Well, yeah, it's going to take you time. It's going to take you, you can only do 1 or 2 of these a year to really capture all of that. And I think there's more and more pressure, in my opinion, to tell the story of the behind the scenes. Like, I think you even mentioned it, like when you did the break when you had some of your earlier successes and your breakthroughs, it was because you were telling the story behind the story that people can kind of like really be in awe of the art in another way. That then lands the message even further, if that makes sense. Because if I saw this, if I saw this piece just with all the straws, if there was absolutely no context, like no sign, no video, nothing that explained to me why this was there, I don't know that everyone would get it. Yep. And that's, it's futile to say that everyone would get it, but I don't know that most people would get it. But it's with the context of the story and the story behind the story sometimes, or the story with the story, the headline that gets to be written, or the little plaque in front of the piece, or whatever it is. Those components have more and more impact on the or on the reception of that story, if that makes sense.
The how.
Yeah.
People are obsessed with the how. Like,
yeah. The how and the why.
Picture, the how and the why. Yeah. It's more impressive the fact that those are straws.
Yes. Because you didn't know that.
I didn't know that before the podcast.
When you saw the photo, you didn't even realize there were straws necessarily.
I had no idea those were straws. Like, I was like, that's a cool photo, but I didn't give it a second look. The minute you guys started talking, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. Some of them are more obvious than others, right? Like,
yes,
this is clearly laptops. Did you know that they were all thrown away laptops? No, you didn't necessarily. But this little piece here starts to tell that story. That little caption at the bottom tells that story. And then some of them are significantly more obvious. Like, this is very obviously plastic bottles.
Even with the Dell one, people are impressed with, like, okay, what is it? What goes into making this? Like, people are so obsessed with that nowadays, and because we have the capability to do it, at least for me.
Yeah. I think many of the creators and entrepreneurs will be very intrigued by the behind the scenes.